Well, welcome to opening day. And perhaps we needed that moment of silence at the beginning of this day in light of the year we've just experienced. We've experienced a lot of challenges, I think institutionally, with our transition to online learning. And if we go back a slide, in our personal lives, I think because of COVID, we've all experienced many challenges, but even nationally, when we think about the forces of systemic racism, political divisiveness, and the socioeconomic inequities that we've all been made aware of over the past year, the Diversity Committee felt we wanted to begin the year with a call for unity. So we've structured our Martin Luther King presentation on that theme. So I just want to open in King's own words when he observes, when we look at modern man, we have to face the fact that, if we can go back a slide, please. Karen, if we can go back a slide. When we look at modern man, we have to face the fact that modern man suffers from a kind of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast with a scientific and technological abundance. We've learned to fly the air as birds. We've learned to swim the seas as fish. Yet we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters. Our goal this morning is to reflect on King's legacy by highlighting some of those people who have influenced him. So we invite you to join us as we reflect on these voices of unity. And then the next slide.
No wonder why Dr. King was drawn to the teachings of Gandhi. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence against political oppression was based on satyagraha. Satyagraha is a Sanskrit word meaning truth force or love force. Practicing satyagraha implies a search for truth and love while confronting, through peaceful resistance, the forces of evil. Satyagraha was the force guiding Gandhi's activism against the British Empire, contributing to the independence of India in 1947. Although Dr. King and Gandhi never met, as Dr. King was only 19 at the moment of Gandhi's assassination, the two men, inspired by convictions greater than themselves, founded a legacy that lives on. According to Chakrabarty, author of a book titled Confluence of Thought, one significant difference between Gandhi and Dr. King is that Gandhi led a majority against a minority British ruling authority. Dr. King confronted a more challenging reality in America. King spearheaded a campaign of historically underprivileged minority against a majority. Despite that, Dr. King stayed true and spoke for and with others, seeking unity, equality, and justice. As Dr. King put it in his 1959 article, My Trip to the Land of Gandhi, and this is a direct quote, India's Gandhi was a guiding light to our technique of nonviolent social change. Thank you.
Benjamin E. Mays, president of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, where Dr. King became a student at the tender age of 15 years old. There he pursued a bachelor's degree in sociology. Dr. Mays served as King's mentor and was inspiration for his entering the fight for civil rights, as he too was a civil rights activist. Not only was he his inspiration for fighting civil rights, but he was also his inspiration for becoming a minister, as he was also a minister. He fought for desegregation and equality in education. In addition, he also served as an advisor to a few U.S. presidents. After class, Dr. King would attend office hours with Dr. Mays to further discuss theologies and current happenings here in the United States of America. The focus was mostly on social justice and civil rights. It was determined that Dr. King often saw Mays as the type of man he himself had wished to become. This was certainly reflected in his actions later on in life, as he certainly seemed to follow in his footsteps. Dr. Mays gave the final eulogy at Dr. King's funeral service. The two men had an agreement, as they were the closest of friends, that whoever outlasted the other would give the final eulogy. Here's an excerpt from that eulogy, quoted by Dr. Benjamin Mays, 1968. God called the grandson of a slave on his father's side, and the grandson of a man born during the Civil War on his mother's side, and said to him, Martin Luther, speak to America about war and peace, about social justice and racial discrimination, about its obligation to the poor, and about nonviolence as a way of perfecting social change in a world of brutality and war. End quote. Dr. King referred to Mr. Mays as my spiritual mentor and my intellectual father. Dr. Mays has stated that his greatest honor was to serve as Martin Luther King Jr.'s mentor. Thank you.
Presenting Creator of Creation, God, Influence of Courage in Martin Luther King's Life. August 27th, 1967, sections of sermon delivered to Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church in Chicago. Themes: discouragement, weakness, prayer, courage, need God, revived by God's Spirit. And now, in some of Martin Luther King's own words. Still need your prayer. The period that we face now is more difficult than any faced in the past. As long as love and justice is around, God is alive. Certain conceptions of God need to die, but not God. Everything is dependent on him, but he is dependent on nothing. All of our new knowledge will not diminish God's being. God is still around. One day, you're going to need him. Problems of life will begin to overwhelm you. Disappointments will begin to beat up on the door of your life like a tidal wave. If you don't have a deep and patient faith, you aren't going to be able to make it. I know this from my own experience. Nasty telephone calls, some days more than 40 telephone calls threatening my life, family, and children. Took it for a while in a strong manner. Never will forget one midnight. Came home, crawled into bed to get some rest, to get up early the next morning to try to keep things going. Telephone started ringing and I picked it up. On the other end, an ugly voice said to me, "We are tired of you and your mess now. And if you aren't out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow your brains out and blow up your house." Turned over, tried to go to sleep, couldn't sleep, frustrated, bewildered. Got up to the kitchen, started warming some coffee, thinking coffee would give me a little relief. Then started thinking about many things. I pulled back on the theology and philosophy I had just studied in the universities, trying to give philosophical and theological reasons for the existence and the reality of sin and evil, but the answer didn't quite come there. I sat there and thought, got to the point, couldn't take it any longer. I was weak. And I discovered I had to know God for myself. That power that can make a way out of no way. I bowed down over that cup of coffee. I never will forget it. Prayed a prayer out loud that night. I said, "Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause we represent is right. But Lord, I must confess I'm weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage. And I can't let the people see me like this. If they see me weak, losing my courage, they will begin to get weak. And it seemed at that moment, I could hear an inner voice saying to me, Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness, justice, and truth. And lo, I will be with you even until the end of the world. I've seen lightning flash, heard the thunder roll, felt sin breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul. But I heard the voice of Jesus saying still to fight on. He promised never to leave me alone. Don't be a fool. Recognize your dependence on God. Realize that there is a God who rules above. So I'm not worried about tomorrow. I get weary every now and then. Future looks difficult and dim, but I'm not worried about it because ultimately I have faith in God. I don't mind telling you this morning that sometimes I feel discouraged. In Chicago, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama, I feel discouraged. Living every day under the threat of death, yes, sometimes I feel discouraged and feel works in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I confess I did a little happy dance yesterday. But like many of us, I've been thinking, what might Martin Luther King Jr. say to us today directly? What would he think and say about the dangerous crossroads at which we find America today? He warned us about the insidious and dangerously corrosive nature of racism. He warned us about the global prevalence of oppression and repression and injustice. And in his introduction to the book, The Radical King, editor Cornel West asserts, quote, "The fundamental question is, does America have the capacity to hear and heed the radical king, or must America sanitize King in order to evade and avoid his challenge," unquote. And West goes on to argue, quote, "The litmus test for realizing King's dream was neither a Black face in the White House nor a Black presence on Wall Street. Rather, the fulfillment of his dream was for all poor and working people to live lives of decency and dignity," unquote. As educators, we have been on the front lines of that struggle for decency and dignity for our students and our communities. As educators, we have been committed to the efforts of our students to improve their lives and the lives of their families and the lives of their communities. As educators, we work to improve the lives of our fellow Americans, our fellow citizens. We know it does none of us any good if our neighbors' children are both hungry and ignorant. We know it does none of us any good if our neighbors live in jail cells at our expense instead of contributing to the expenses of our democracy. We face the challenges of truth and justice every day. We help make a way out of no way. Today, many of us struggle with our own anxiety, fear, anger, pain, distrust, hurt, despair, uncertainty, frustration, weariness. I guess the list could go on. We struggle, but we are still here, ready to do our duty, to do our work, to see another cycle to its conclusion, to help another iteration of students achieve a dream, to gain knowledge and skills, to build better lives, to build a stronger America. We are still here. This is our work. Here and now, we can all recommit ourselves to decency, honesty, hard work, truth, justice, democracy, and the foundational power of education, It is what we educators do. So thank you all for being here. My thanks especially to all the members of our diversity committee who worked to put this together. Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I appreciate your patience this morning as well. So good morning and a warm welcome back. I hope you had a nice break and that you enjoyed your holidays. Before you know it, the weather will get warmer, the sun will be shining, and the flowers will begin to bloom. Nothing says new beginnings like the start of the spring semester. Personally, I am happy the year 2020 is in the past, and I am feeling very hopeful that 2021 will bring us healing, innovation, sharing of ideas, but also happiness and good health to all of you. Naturally, we will still have some bumps in the road as this year begins, but I can't help but reflect on how much we have learned and grown as a community. I find that when we face difficult times, it often helps to look for the silver lining. And as I reflect on the challenges we face this year, I can also clearly see the positives as we look to the future. For example, we finally have a vaccine to fight COVID-19. We successfully pivoted together as a community to continue serving our students during a very difficult time. We saw communities everywhere, including our own MCC community, come together to discuss ways to address systemic racism, even in our own backyard. And then just yesterday, we watched as our country made history by swearing in VP Kamala Harris, the first woman and woman of color, to serve as our Vice President of the United States. A profound moment for so many of us, and an indication that we are on a more positive path. So in the spirit of looking ahead and feeling hopeful, I would like to offer you some additional reflections about our MCC community and just some of the things that we have accomplished together. We held a wonderful, engaging, and well-attended virtual Black Lives Matter event, and I hope to continue having more of these events, but also to really keep the dialogue going. We held a virtual Achieving the Dream Data Cafe, where all had the opportunity to connect together about issues of equity, access, and student success at MCC. We then used that data to create an initial diversity plan to identify and break down barriers we know exist for our most at-risk students. We also held a virtual interfaith event to give thanks on Veterans Day. We held 2 virtual CEO coffee hour events this past semester, and these events were also very well attended and gave us the opportunity to connect with each other. We created and sent out an MCC climate survey as a way for me to connect with you and gather your comments and feedback. Faculty reported similar levels of job satisfaction from last year, and staff reported an overall increase in job satisfaction from last year. I assure you I read every comment because it's important for me to understand how you are doing during this time, but also to understand what you need from me and leadership as well. Many of the comments were positive and encouraging, but I also want to point out that you collectively expressed concerns related to 3 distinct themes: concerns about COVID, concerns about enrollment, and concerns about the impacts of consolidation. Your various comments and feedback led to some positive changes we have already made, such as the reorganization in student affairs, the additional emphasis on outreach and community engagement, the addition of academic division coordinators, and we reinvigorated our Netchi accreditation efforts this year. However, I have a few more positive highlights to share today as we begin this semester and this new year. Our MCC Foundation, in a remote environment, has been able to engage brand new first-time donors to MCC. They raised more than $45,000 from these first-time donors, but the most humbling part of this news is that among those new donors, 55 of them were Manchester Community College alumni. Certainly something for all of us to be proud of. We're also seeing some movement with enrollment. As we know, enrollment is on the decline everywhere, and we are certainly not immune to that national trend. However, we are seeing some positive results after the restructuring of student affairs and the increased focus on outreach and recruitment. Notably, we are seeing a significant increase in the number of brand new first-time students applying to MCC. And as of last week, we are up about 3% in enrollment as compared to the fall 2020 enrollment numbers. So I applaud the efforts of our MCC student affairs and enrollment management teams, and as well as the faculty who helped. We have successfully gained approval to hire 3 new full-time faculty members during the hiring freeze, 1 for each academic division. We also successfully hired a new Dean of Institutional Advancement who joined our leadership team just last week. It's Dr. Tom Reynolds. And lastly, we have just received approximately $7.5 million of federal money to assist us as we face significant financial challenges at MCC due to the global pandemic and declining enrollment. I will know more about how those dollars can be utilized in the coming weeks, but reportedly, we will be able to allocate more than $1.5 million directly to student aid. This is good news. This is good news for our college and for our students. We do have a very full agenda today, so I will conclude my remarks by wishing you a wonderful semester, full of positivity, full of hope, and new beginnings. Please remember to stay connected with each other during this time and practice self-care when you can this semester. Please enjoy the rest of our opening day presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Employee Excellence Awards presented by Claudia LaRock.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for joining us in this celebration of excellence. We thought this slide appropriately represents the mountains that we've all had to climb over the past year. And it also represents the challenges that we faced as a committee, sorting through more than 50 nominations with many heartwarming, moving, and inspiring nominations that in some cases brought tears to our eyes. It is with sadness and pride that we pay tribute to our MCC family members, Earl, Carol, and Ed, who passed away in 2020. They were all nomination recipients for 2020 as well. Please join us in celebrating their contributions and commitment to the MCC community. This is what was said about them in the nominations. For Earl's pleasant greetings to everyone on campus and his beautiful smile and charismatic, engaging personality all contributed to our college community and student success. For Carol's vivacious and kind personality always made everyone feel at ease. Her can-do attitude made faculty and staff feel supported and valued. And for Ed, he is an amazing instructor and shows he cares so much about his students. He will live forever in the memory of students, staff, and faculty. And special thanks to all of the nominees, where we read about the many, many things that they did. For example, we heard about facilities management, security and administration helped establish a safe and secure environment for students, faculty, and staff. And how during this time a new website was launched while assisting everyone with their hardware and connectivity so we could all survive this virtual world that we are living in. Innovation and creation of many new resources and the training to support students, faculty, and staff as well. And lastly, we heard about how some people use their own time and financial resources to facilitate student learning. I could go on, but it's now time to share the winners of this year's Excellence in Teaching and Excellence in Service Awards. Firstly, so you know, this is the criteria that we use to evaluate excellence in teaching. And these are the nominees for the 2020 Excellence in Teaching Award. Note that the names that are in red received multiple nominations. I'll give you a minute to take a look at these names. This is what was said about the winner of the Excellence in Teaching Award this year. Maybe you'll know who that is by way of these quotes. Without her guidance, I would not be where I am today. Her support and guidance and the ability to lead by example helped me to learn to believe in myself. She uses her love for the profession to excite students. She has always shown me ways to think critically and challenge myself. The joy that radiates from within her when she teaches is so contagious. That joy made me hopeful and incredibly excited for my future. And the winner is Donna Sweeney. Donna, please wave or say hello. And others join me in congratulating Donna on receiving this Excellence in Teaching Award for 2020. Congratulations, Donna. Yay. Excellence in Service has a little different criteria as shown here, but note that both have a focus on students. These are the nominees for the 2020 Excellence in Service Awards. Again, any name in red was nominated multiple times. And this is some of what was said about the winner for Excellence in Service for 2020. Every day, her actions demonstrate her concern for MCC. She is smart and detailed, as well as able to look at the big picture. She has always said we are literally in this together. She has taken COVID head on. She is a wealth of information, and she is the glue that holds our department together. Please join me in congratulating Kristen Messick for receiving the Excellence in Service Award for 2020. Yay. Again, congratulations to all nominees and the winners. And thanks to all of you who supported our efforts by submitting nominations. And special thanks to all of the committee for helping me make this happen today. And I wish you all a good semester. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Human Resources Updates and Service Awards presented by Patricia Lindo.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I hope all is well with you. And so far, you're having a happy new year. Next slide, please, Karen. I'd like to announce all the retirees that we've had to date. And as you can see from the list, we have a small amount. Thomas Barrett, he was an adjunct in the paralegal program. He retired January 1st
with 34 years of service. Barry Grant, Director of Information Technology, retired December 1st with 10 years of service. Lucy Hurston, Professor of Sociology, retired January 1st, 20 years of service. Carol Lavanswick, Secretary 2. She worked in the counseling area. She retired December 1st, 34 years of service. Pauline Lazati, Assistant Professor of Biology, retired January 1st with 13 years of service. And Androli Londo, an adjunct in the Mathematics Department, retired January 1st with 10 years of service. We have 2 upcoming retirement, and that's Mike Davis, Lieutenant for Campus Police, will be retiring on February 1st with 20 years of service. And Susan Klassen Sullivan, Professor of Visual Fine Arts, will be retiring February 1st, 30 years of service. We wish our retirees all the best of luck as they journey on to their new life of having fun with whatever they plan to do. So let's congratulate them and wish them all the best. Next slide. Our new hires that we have, Mark Allen, police officer. He started on November 20th. Thomas Reynolds, Dean of Institutional Advancement, as Nicole had mentioned, just recently started on January 15th. And Eugenia Weaver, Interim Registration Assistant, started on January 1st. Now we know in our normal face-to-face opening day, we would have been able to see them and recognize, they would stand and be recognized and would see what they look like. Unfortunately, in this environment, we're not able to see our 3 new hires. So I hope at some point in the future, we'll be able to see them, welcome them, and wish them all the best. So congratulations to these 3 new hires, and we wish them all the best at MCC. Next slide. Internal move that we've had, Matthew Bonesteel, who was formerly the registration assistant, is now the interim enrollment services coordinator. Mariah Thomas, she was the enrollment services coordinator. She's now the interim associate director of admissions. The associate dean of students, that search is still in progress. And as Nicole has mentioned, we have 3 searches, faculty searches, that will be moving forward soon. And also a part-time educational assistant for a Gear Up project assistant will be in process soon. And just a few reminders, the FirstNet Learning platform is no longer the platform that will be used for the online learning training. That service has been discontinued. The new online services that will be used for training will be NeoGov. There was an email that went out last week to announce them. They sent it out to, CSCU sent it out to all employees that you should activate your account to be able to access the system. So if you have not taken the HVO harassment training, please go ahead and activate your account and you'll be able to complete that training, which is due by February 9th. And also your annual ethics training, should be able to get onto that platform and have that training completed by the end of the semester. The DS and service training registration was sent out on Tuesday. A reminder that those registrations are due into HR by February 5th. The 2020 electronic W-2s are now available, and anyone that's not on direct deposit will be receiving a printed 2020 W-2 in the mail. Promotion and tenure applications will be due on February 14th. That date has been extended, so it will not be due tomorrow, which is the first day of the semester. You have until February 4th, 2021 to turn that in by the end of the day. And now we will recognize the service award recipients. Next slide. 10 years of service. We have quite a list here. 10 years of service. Trent T.J. Barber, Pradee Bajarka, Yanitza Betancourt, Robert Brandt, Maria Kohler, Christopher Davis, Kimberly DeShane, Carol Director, Nadal Drissy, Randall Ewart, Regina Ferrante, Carolina Flores, Sean Gilani, Keith Hughes, Anthony Janizek Jr., Michael Jordan Riley, Colleen Kim, Kristen LeBranch, Heather LeBlanc, Carrie McKinsey Jett, Linda Miner, Pamela Mitchell, Mary Moriarty, Alexander Oliphant, Carol Oliveri, Michael Pence, Christopher Percy, Diana Reed, Fatma Salman, Adam Scott, Cheyenne Seymour, Blake Shirley, Nathaniel Stafford, Sarah Tremblay, and Sarah Vincent. Congratulations to all of you for your 10 years of service at MCC or at another state agency. 15 years of service, Natalie Bellinger, Stephen Campiglio, Evelyn Froelich, Rachel Gandhi, Susan Jenkin, Ann Koba, Peter Mitchell, Susan O'Donnell, Lorraine Olenetz, Gregory Palmanero, Carolyn Rivers, and Josephine Sanchez. 20 years of service, Jody Bailey, Stephen Bloom, Carolyn Egan, Patricia Fairwood, Alan Horton, Philip Johnson, Barbara Milner, David Nielsen, Anthony Perez Jr., George Pillar, Felix Sanchez Colazo, Donald Sikowski, and Charlene Tappet. Congratulations to all of you for your 15 and 20 years of service. 25 years of service, Melissa Rivera, Deborah Simmons. 30 years of service, Kathleen Peters, William Purtill. 35 years of service, Robert Foley, Catherine Jones, Sharon Mills, and we did not have anyone for 40 years, 45 years, or 50 years of service. Normally, everyone would be on stage. They would be awarded their certificates or their nameplate or clock. In this particular environment, we're not able to do that, but we will be forwarding those awards to all the recipients. Again, congratulations to the 10-year, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, 35 years of service to all our employees. Thank you all very much, and have a great semester and enjoy your day.
Thank you. Next is Academic and Student Affairs update, presented by Dr. Salman.
Do I have the slides? Yeah, please.
The next one, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Oops. Okay.
Very good, thanks. Good morning, dear faculty and staff. I want to welcome you back to spring semester 2021. I have to say it's a new day, in a new semester, in a new year. I'm hopeful. I'm pretty sure all of you are. With all the challenges we faced and we're facing, we'll continue to face. I want you to be always hopeful, strong, and be there for one another. And always keep it as us, not me, not you, us. I'm pretty sure, and I have no doubt, that MCC community will over any challenges, or overcome, I have to say, any challenges that will face us, as we did in the past. I know how busy you are. This is why I just want to make sure I thank you all for being here today, listening to us, just getting updates, and also thank you for being there, as always, for our students, for our institution, as we've done so much work on you. We all working hard for one goal, helping our students and our institution. With this being said, I want to be brief and quick making sure I highlight some of the updates, or I just say some of the great work done by many of you. And this is just some, but not limited to these. For, as you all aware, I'm the Interim Dean of Academic and Student Affairs. So I just want to give you a quick view on the Student Affairs update. As CEO Nicole said, some of the changes happened in Student Affairs to help with the challenges we are all facing, institution-wise, system-wise, and nation-wise. For enrollment, as the enrollment declines due to the so many challenges that we're facing, COVID and others, there was a realignment of enrollment service and advising, which advising now it's under enrollment management to better serve our students. With the shortage in staff, and one of the staff, Jeanette Rivera, went back to her home college, Gateway. Student Affairs has to be creative and do some inner changes. So now we have Maria Thomas announced to be the Interim Associate Director of Admission in December 2020. And as Patricia also mentioned, all these names, but I just want to give you an overview on how these changes had to be made to help better serve our students. Also, Matthew Bonsteel is now the Interim ESC, December 2020. Gina Waver, this is the new hire to help with registration service as a registration service assistant, also December 2020. So these changes made to help our students and to help enrollment. Also, our enrollment team went far and beyond to help our students enrolled at MCC. So they already have opt-in registration forms that helped about 120 students have their schedule way ahead in advance as of January 20. They conducted so many info sessions, about more than 10 of those info sessions, FAFSA workshops, help sessions. They had about 16 of these workshops, and they'll continue. Also, they participated in virtual recruitment events in partnership. They conducted two Super Saturdays and one third coming. One was on December 5th, as you see, we started way earlier this semester, as well as one was conducted or held on January 9th. And the third one that's coming this coming Saturday, the 23rd. Also, they had contact forms, about 1,600 of them, to reach out to our students and help them get into MCC and enroll. Second slide, please, Karen. On the academic affairs side, also, this is some, but not least, or I should say not limited. We have our self-study, MCC self-study, as all of you are aware. It's on April 2022. We still need more volunteers. Our site visit will be April 10th to the 13th of spring 2022, as mentioned. Your help is needed. I know lots of work have been done. We have so many leads, and I want to thank all of them for taking the time with their busy schedule, with their hard work and other aspects, also to volunteer and help with our self-study, Netchi. but we still need your help. So please, if you're not helping with Netchi, we still need your help. Contact me or contact Katie Kleiss, she's the lead for Netchi. She will be talking about Netchi in details, so please take the time to just, listen, and we need your help. I can't repeat this again and again and again. And thank you all, whoever is volunteering already to do the work. Thank you, really appreciate it. Of course, since I started, there was so many policies, procedures, new policies coming from the system office. Credit, no credit, NP policy for credit, no credit, and MP policy, or also especially for the MP policy, there are professors and staff taking the lead, talking about the Netchi and the policies and some of the resources. But I just want to highlight things really quick. Some of you contacted me if students are aware of these stuff, because faculty get the first hit if students not aware. Of course, students are aware of these policies from the system office, from us, sending them emails as well, letting them know about these policies and the due dates, so they are aware of it. For teaching resources, I think the professors will take the lead today to talk about resources for Center for Teaching and for Proctorio. But just to make sure that you also know that we will offer a class for iTeach. So stay tuned for that. It should be either the end of this month or early February. For Proctorio, I want to emphasize something for Proctorio. I know Professor Morris will be talking about it today. However, I just want to make sure if you're using Proctorio, it's voluntarily. If a faculty want to use Proctorio, please do so, and make sure you get the training for it, and make sure if you're using it with your students, you have to have the syllabus template for Proctorio on your syllabus. Also be mindful that students could have difficulty with technology, softwares, whatever the scenario is, or decided not to use Proctorio, even though you're using it for your class. So you have to have a backup plan for that particular student and accommodate those students as well. So this is one I just highlight. I want to make sure also you're aware, which I'm pretty sure you are, but just making sure, emphasize the information that's sent out, that the shared services, HR and IT, makes stuff sometimes kind of, frustrating, slow, but we really appreciate your patience as we move forward and we face so many challenges. New hires, you're aware that we got the approval for 3 faculty positions, bio instructor, English instructor, and a DART coordinator. We're moving forward with this process, but it's taking more than usual because there are new hiring process. It just started this year. So we're following this new hire process. It takes way more time, and also making sure that you understand it is MCC now can recommend to the system office, and the final approval for these positions comes from the system office. For the PTL, the part-time contracts, the non-credit contracts, and the educational assistant contracts now started winter, handled by the system office, not by MCC. So your contracts will come from the system office, not from MCC. You still have to, contact your academic associate, ask if you have any question about the contract, or Patricia Lindo if you have any question about HR, if you have any question regarding HR or your contract. Just to give you this heads up, why the stuff's taking a little bit longer, for the contracts taking care, or system office taking care of it. It is just expected from now on, maybe a week or 2 weeks before the semester started. So the system office officially told us that they will do it just 2 weeks, or I think maybe 10 to 15 days before the winter classes started. So always be mindful that it's always be within a week or 2 weeks from the semester started, and sometimes even maybe less than that. So I conclude with that. Please make sure if you have any question, email me, contact me, call me. I'm always here for you. Just we're in this together, and it's about us. Like I mentioned before, always about us. We're a team. We're just want to be here to help our students and help each other, lift each other. Stay positive, stay connected. It's also just, I want to leave you with just a positive attitude, a smile on my face, even though with all the challenges that we face. And I feel you, I hear you. Have a wonderful semester and a productive, healthy semester as well. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your opening day.
Next is the Netchi update presented by Dr. Katie Kleiss. Katie?
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I hope everybody had got some rest over the holidays and gearing up for the start of another semester. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Katie Kleiss. I teach in the Criminal Justice Department here at MCC. And so I'm currently serving in the role of the Netchi project manager as MCC engages in our rigorous self-study process as part of Netchi accreditation. So those of you who were here for the last accreditation 10 years ago, when it was called NEASC, you were probably aware of some of the process involved. So what I'd like to do today is just to give you a very brief overview of what the accreditation process actually involves, talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing here at MCC, and as Fatma said, that we are still very interested in soliciting volunteers to assist with this process. So we are undergoing preparations for our 10-year self-study. As Dean Salmon mentioned, we are scheduled for the site visit in April of 2022. I'm hopeful at that point when the visiting team is on campus at MCC, we will also all be there. And so what I wanted to do is just very briefly sort of explain the accreditation process. And really what accreditation is designed to do is to determine if an institution is meeting quality standards. So what it really is it's this confluence of the established standards of higher education, in this case, our accrediting body, which is Netchi, how that aligns with the mission of our institution. And then what we essentially do during the self-study process is we are critically evaluating how we do things, what we do, and any potential areas for improvement. And so as we go through that self-evaluation process, the second step would then be for the peer assessment piece. And that's really the visiting team that's going to read our report. They're going to come in, and then they are going to be making recommendations to the commission, which I'll discuss in just a moment. So really what accreditation allows us to do is to critically examine what we do on a variety of levels, both macro and micro, and to really foster improvement and growth. I think if we think about the day-to-day activities that we undergo at MCC, I think, you know, we often think about our silos, right? Faculty are involved in the classroom. Student services, of course, are dealing with all things enrollment and advising and financial aid. But it's really an opportunity for us to holistically evaluate how we do things at MCC. So just to give a broad overview for anyone who's not aware of kind of the process and the role of an accrediting body. So again, Netchi stands for the New England Commission of Higher Education. So what they're really, I'm not going to get too in depth with the specifics of our accrediting body. Their website is a very useful source where you can find a lot of really good information. You can read reports about other institutions that have gone through the accreditation process. And most importantly, you can view the standards for accreditation. So Netchi is the regional accrediting agency for MCC and for other colleges and universities in the 6 New England states. They also have some international representation as well. And so the commission is comprised of faculty, administrators, and trustees from different affiliated institutions, as well as the public. And so kind of what their overarching goal is and role is to really set policy and make decisions relative to the institutions that they accredit. So one of the things that it's important for us to be aware of as a campus is that accreditation is a status that provides assurance to prospective students and their families, as well as the general public, that the institution meets clearly stated standards for accreditation, and there's reasonable grounds to believe that the institution will continue to meet those standards in the future. Students will often ask, is the institution accredited? And we'll talk about the significance of accreditation. But really what it is, it's a checks and balance. It's not the big bad accrediting body that is here to watch every move that we make and to find fault with us. What it really is it's an opportunity. By going through the accreditation process, it allows us to critically evaluate how we're doing things on an ongoing basis. Of course, accreditation has a lot of really important implications, for students' prospective employment, for transferability. And what these standards help to do, the standards that are established by Netchi and other accrediting bodies, is it kind of helps to ensure legitimacy of an academic institution. So one of the things that we want to keep in mind, and we've been kind of continuously reminding our standards teams of this, is that it's this ongoing relationship. It's not proving that we do everything perfect. That's certainly not the case. But what it really is, it's designed to be the process of review and not inspection. So completing the self-study is an attempt and an opportunity for us as an institution to identify areas of need and to critically evaluate the institutional practices as they align with the Commission's standards. So what it really, I think, comes down to is the opportunity for us as an institution as a whole to examine what we do, how we do it, and where we can actually improve. So generally speaking, when we talk about how an evaluation would be done, and if you're familiar with the Netchi process, if you've looked at any of the standards, what stands out is the emphasis on kind of 3 dimensions of quality. And what we're really looking at is input, process, and outcome. And so these examples on the screen can help to demonstrate how we might look at various aspects of what we do. And part of that critical evaluation process that we go through as part of the accreditation process is taking these kind of buckets into consideration. So, what on its face, are there adequate resources for students? Are there adequate resources for faculty? What is the process involved with doing certain things on campus? If I'm kind of pulling an example out, so like registration. So, we understand that we have a process in place for registration. What does that look like? Have we ensured that we have eliminated barriers for students? How do we communicate that to students? And then finally, outcome. How do we assess whether or not what we do on a regular basis in a variety of areas at the college, is it effective or not? And then making projections, right? So what does the future look like? Certainly, as I mentioned, they don't expect that we are going to say that we do everything perfectly, but they are looking for us to be as candid as possible and to be as upfront as possible, because that's our opportunity for growth. So just to give you a brief overview, and I won't read these to you, but you can take a look at the screen. These are the 9 standards that have been established by Netchi. Each standard contains numerous substandards, and those substandards helps to guide the data collection and evaluation process. So even those of you who may not be directly involved in serving on a standard team, you may be receiving outreach from the standard team relative to one of the areas at the college that you might have some expertise and knowledge. So it might be data, it might be information that we're seeking relative to a particular process that we might have in place. So under these substandards, and again, if you take a look on Netchi's website, you can see these in detail. They're also on the MCC website. We'll sort of outline the standards for which we have to respond to various expectations and in our self-study report. So on an ongoing basis, the Commission engages in their own process of self-evaluation. So what will come of that is they will update the standards to reflect current trends in higher ed, as well as areas of concern. So these changes that you see on the screen a heightened attention to disclosure of information about student success, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as organization and governance, are three of the substantive changes that we saw Netchi establish as of January 1, 2021. So these are things that our standard teams are currently looking at. Additional areas of emphasis that we have been asked to ensure that we're focused on and that we are collecting data on and keeping track of is our response to COVID-19. So you may have some outreach from a standard team asking you if there were any adjustments that were made, or one of the things that we've talked about as a leadership team is the fact that we all, everybody scrambled and everybody across the campus pulled their weight in different ways in response to COVID, which really, caused a lot of pivots to happen with very little notice. And so we may not have been great about documenting that at the time. We were just so focused on doing the work that we do without interruption that we didn't really take the time to communicate that to others or to record it in some formal way. So you may have some outreach from some of our standard teams. And it's helpful even if you have some things off the top of your head that you can think of where you might, contact us and just let us know, some of the efforts that you undertook. Concern with fiscal health, of course, when we look at budgets and shrinking budgets. And then finally, I think one of the things that goes without saying is that our site visit, the due date of our self-study, comes right up against the, of course, proposed date for consolidation in 2023. So, and with many of the system changes already underway, this is also something that Netchi is looking at and in anticipation of the consolidation, and then being very aware of what's going on in the Connecticut community colleges. So to just give you some brief information about what the team visit will actually look like, and I think that this is helps to explain why I'm here today as well, to inform you about the process, and we'll continue to update you with information relative to the Netchi self-study, is that, and I'll share in just a moment with you the actual timeline, but right now our standard teams are in the process of gathering information that pertain to each standard in the development of the materials that will be used to guide the writing of the self-study. So once our report has been written, the campus has an opportunity to provide feedback. It will be submitted to Netchi. Netchi will be then giving it to the individuals who will be participating in our team visit. These individuals are peer institutions. They're individuals that are well versed in the accreditation process and come from peer institutions. They're not competitors. They don't come to find things that are wrong with us. They come to provide helpful feedback and to write their own report that they then submit to the commission in accordance with our, and also in concert with our self-study report as well. So once that report's written, it's submitted, they review it, they then will visit our campus as part of the process. And the team visit, as I mentioned earlier, is scheduled from April 10th through 13th. And one of the things that's important is during this visit, the visiting team will meet with staff, faculty, administrators, and students, and will gather additional evidence to help inform the commission. So as we have these campus-wide meetings and as they make requests to meet with certain departments, it is important that everybody is on the same page relative to our self-study, that everybody's aware of the things we're doing on campus. So these sessions can be helpful. What we don't want, of course, is Netchi to come and to say, hey, we were in a meeting and no one knew about this. No one knew about something you wrote about in your self-report and said that everybody knows about this or everybody's doing this. So it's really important for myself and the leadership team to continue to apprise the campus of this process and any information as we're sort of ongoing here. So to give you a brief idea, and I won't get into the actual bullets here as they pertain to different statuses, but what the commission will do is they will, and the commission is comprised of 27 individuals, many of them administrators, faculty, members of the public from the institutions that are members of Netchi. And there's a regular election process, so it's a process where I think they serve 2-year terms and there's some rotation in there. So the commission receives our self-study. They receive the report from the visiting team, and also the response of our institution to the report that has actually been developed by the visiting team. And then what they basically determine is whether or not the institution should be continued in accreditation. Obviously, we've been NIASC accredited before, and so this is again an ongoing process. Some of the things you see on the screen are different. You know, if an institution wanted to have a new program or a new institution was establishing itself, they would go through a different process. So what the commission will do is they will flag areas of focus for interim reports. If many of you were involved in our 5-year report 5 years ago, actually it was less than that actually at this bar. I'm trying to think. I have to count backwards from 2022. And so they may request additional steps be taken in the form of a progress report or a focused evaluation. And then really what we attempt to do as a campus when we receive that accreditation and we receive the feedback from the commission is we attempt over that next 5 years is to really improve in those areas. And so that really helps us see where we might be falling short, where there's room for improvement. And provides us a lot of really good feedback. And I know that in my time at MCC, in my involvement with the interim report, that I am very aware that our institution has focused on the things that came up on the last report and has taken very concerted efforts to turn some of our areas, and I don't want to call them weakness, but areas that were in need of improvement to some of our strengths. So one more kind of mention of the importance of candor, and I say this because many of you will be approached by the standards seeking information, is that candor is really crucial to the self-study process. So we have been reminding people on campus, as well as our standards teams, that the goal here is really to be reflective and upfront about what we're doing, not what we should be doing. That's what they're really interested in learning about. That's our opportunity for us to really have the chance to sit back and say, what do we do? How do we do it? And are there changes that need to be implemented? And in many cases, the answer might be no, that everything we're doing works, it's efficient, we're collecting data to suggest that we are regularly tracking effectiveness, efficiency, we're making sure that we hit benchmarks. But again, it's not an attempt to sugarcoat things or to try to hide anything. It's really for us to be self-reflective so we can improve. And so just as with any evaluation, Netchi does not expect perfection. So this is a rendition of our self-study timeline, and I don't want to get into too much detail on it. I'm happy to provide this to anybody who might be interested. But I do want to just highlight where we are now and sort of where we continue over the next several months. And so right now, we're in the throes of data collection. It's an incredibly arduous task, no matter what. I can tell you it's increasingly arduous given COVID and many of us teleworking and system changes that seem to happen every day. And so I can't say enough for our standard team members who have absolutely dove in headfirst to this work. Their willingness to contribute to this important process would not, if they were not willing, this would not be happening. So any way that others can help, if they reach out to you, it's very much appreciated that you gave us anything that you can to help assist with this. So we will be soliciting campus-wide feedback. So we have asked our standard teams to provide us with the documentation and evidence by April. So at this year's May Institute, we will be soliciting some campus-wide feedback on major findings. We'll be requesting input on our projections that we'll be making for the future. And then this summer, our 2 writers who have graciously stepped up and volunteered, Lisa Sandoval and Megan Finley, will begin drafting our self-study report. So I don't know if that sounds like a fun summer to you guys. I give them so much credit. It's a very, it's a massive undertaking and very appreciative of their willingness to step up. So at the beginning of the fall 2021 semester, I hope we'll be all sitting in the auditorium on opening day. We will be sharing the self-study with the campus community. We'll be gathering feedback and revisions before the report goes off to Netchi. This is where we really dig in with administrators. We start to talk to people in different areas. Debbie Herman's been incredible as far as helping us to set up our electronic workroom. So if you are a committee chair, or you might be being asked for things like meeting minutes, so we compile all those documents for our visit, should our visiting team want to review any of that. So we will be working hard to keep the campus abreast of what's going on during this time as we lead up to that site visit in April. And it will involve many of us across campus. So our collective awareness of what we actually do at MCC, what's going on around us, will be very crucial during this time. And so we will be doing all that we can with a regular outreach to keep the campus community apprised of any new developments, and just provide information ongoing about the actual process and the writing of the report. So I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and thank everyone who has been involved in this process to date. I'm very appreciative of the exceptional work and leadership of everyone who's volunteered to participate in this process. Thank you to the leadership team for their oversight of the process, their willingness to support and guide the work of the standards teams. CEO Esposito has been exceptional as far as being in tune with us and offering her assistance and her support, which I think some days when we're diving into all the data, that's the only thing we need is a little is some cheerleading from our administrators. So Dean Salmon and CEO Esposito have been tremendous in doing that. And then for our standards teams, and I won't read you everyone's name. Sorry, Karen, next slide. Sorry. So thank you to everyone who has volunteered to serve and who continues to put in long hours and their tireless work in doing this. Thank you to our standard team leads for your oversight and the organization of the work. That's a tremendous undertaking, just dividing and conquering these standards and these substandards. So I'm very, very appreciative for that. And you can just see some of our involvement on our various teams. Right. So that brings me to my final slide here, and thank you so much for your attention today. We still need help. So I know many people are incredibly busy. This is not to put more on your plate. This is an incredibly important process. Our institution really relies on this. It's really important that we do good work here. And so, the only thing that I would offer is that in a lot of cases, we talk to individuals and they say, well, I didn't know I could contribute in any way. Trust me, every single person on this campus has some expertise or unique knowledge that can benefit this process. Sometimes it's just a matter of kind of asking us. We will put you where we think you serve the process the best. And we welcome people participating in different capacities. So at the end of the slide, I will have my contact information, but please reach out to me. And the other thing I would say, if you're new to MCC, I know we have some new faces, some new hires. When I first became involved in our 5-year interim report, I was pretty new on campus, as were some of the other people who are now on the leadership team. Meg and Lisa had just started when I started. And I actually found that participation in this process helped me learn the institution, because I remember feeling very lost and confused. Where do I go for this information? But it really helped me to become better integrated, to understand the classroom, the campus beyond the classroom, understand the institution in a more holistic way, and really engage with colleagues that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to engage with. So I thank you for your time and attention today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you. Next is academic engagement policy presented by Dr. Vandenberg, Anita Spiro, and Anna Torres.
Good morning, everyone. Karen, could you just advance us to the next slide? So I'm going to keep my camera on for a second because I haven't met most of you in person. And so I just wanted to say hi, give you a look at who keeps emailing you all the time about these things. But I can't really see very well, so I always have to get really close to the camera, the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off for this. Okay, so our presentation today is going to focus on a few different areas. So first off, we're going to talk about what's the point in implementing this policy? Why are we doing it? We're going to very briefly touch on what went wrong last semester, so that we can kind of look at what we're doing going forward. So, you know, I know we had some experiences together, so we're going to see what we did last semester and then what's going to be different this semester, and then we'll go over the new procedure. So Anna, can you take the next slide, or most of it?
Yes. So why are we implementing this policy? One of the reasons why this policy was implemented is for Title IV reporting. We as an institution can only disperse funds when a student is actively engaged in their courses. So if a student is not actively participating in the class, federal regulations prohibit us from dispersing funds for that particular course. Therefore, it's important to report students for not engaging prior to census. And I know Mary Lou will go over the timeline for reporting as we go further into the presentation. So after financial aid is dispersed into a student's account, their tuition, the student's tuition fees and books are covered. And most times the student, there are excess funds available, so the student is entitled to a refund check. However, if a student is reported for receiving an NP grade later in the semester, after that census and after that disbursement time, that this can impact their aid eligibility. So for example, if an instructor reports an NP after census, that means we have to cancel the financial aid, send it back to the federal government, and then in return, this results in the students owing a bill. So yes, of course, the charges are being reversed, but we also are sending the financial aid back, which impacts possibly that refund check that they have received. So then this becomes, most of the time the student does not have the funds to repay that bill. So this creates a liability owed to the school from the student, which often goes into collections or becomes subject to the tax intercept process. The student will have a hold that is placed on their account, which will prevent them from obtaining their transcript or registering for a future semester, so it can most definitely derail their academic career here at MCC. But as long as the students are reported appropriately during the specified time frame, which is before the census period, we can avoid having our students be impacted negatively and then having to also create that receivable to the college. And the second point to consider is that financial aid does eventually max out. So federal regulations require that a student receiving financial aid under the Title IV program makes satisfactory academic progress. The satisfactory academic progress considers of their cumulative grade point average, which of course is the GPA, and their cumulative pace. So in other words, for financial aid purposes, all attempted credits that a student takes resulting in either an academic grade or administrative transcript notation will be included in the calculation that determines the satisfactory academic progress. So for example, let's say a student that receives financial aid for any attempted credits in his or her program of study, they cannot exceed 150% of the published length of the student's educational program. So that means that if we have a student that's enrolled in a 60 credit degree program, they may receive financial aid for a maximum of 90 attempted credit hours. And of course, it would be similar that if we have a student enrolled in a 30 credit certificate program, that their maximum attempted credit hours would be 45. So the way this impacts the academic engagement policy is when a student does not engage in a course and receives an F, this will impact, of course, their GPA and their attempted credit hours, and the student may eventually lose their eligibility as a result of this. But if they were given an NP grade or basically dropped from that course for not participating, this would prevent a student from reaching their maximum credit load for courses that they do not engage in.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I think that a lot of times we look at these kind of policies and say, oh, it's not a big deal if I don't report this or if I report it late. And I know that the communication was problematic last semester, so I'm not casting any blame. But, it really impacts students. And so I think we all know that students, as faculty members, when students come in and beg to get into your class, even a week late, when they've missed that first week, they're almost invariably unsuccessful in the class. And so when you look at this, when you drop them for NP, that means they haven't participated for a minimum of 2 weeks, but actually the first NP date is more like 2.5 weeks into the class. And so that student is very unlikely to succeed. And also if another student, who hadn't been registered came to you and asked to get into the class at that late date, you would most likely say no. that they couldn't come into the class. And so I think that it's really only fair to try to set students up to succeed. And so, reporting them is actually doing them a favor, because also students who pay out of pocket get a full refund. And so if you don't report them, they paid out of pocket, you actually could be depriving them of their refund. And then also the student, that Anna already talked about, the financial aid impact. So I think that a lot of times folks don't realize that this kind of reporting can really derail a student's entire academic career when they can't pay a bill and they get a hold on their records. So that's why it's so incredibly important. So let's move on to the next slide. I'm, berate you with this. So, to touch briefly, I know we were really stressed out with this last semester. So we had some issues with advanced training, the way that it was rolled out. I don't even think it was in the syllabus template last time. And so, a lot of times folks found out about it on opening day. Well, the syllabi had already been posted on Blackboard. So, we didn't have a lot of advanced training. The students were sent information on the policy, but what happened is there was a conflict in messaging where the faculty were told, here's the date, drop the students, you did what you were supposed to do. And then the students were sent a message that said, hey, let us know if you want to try to stay in this class, after they were reported. And so that's what led to the mass of emails and begging and pleading and can I get back into this class, and I didn't know, and all of these kinds of things. So we're going to try to overcome that. So moving on, I just want to say next, let's see, I think I have something to add to this, which is I always like to have a puppy picture, which is, let's take a deep breath. I appreciate the stress that this caused you last semester. I know a lot of people got it more than others. And what happened is a lot of times a student would go to one faculty member and get permission to rejoin the class, and then go to another faculty member who received the message, which was they're not supposed to be added back to the class. And it created all of this conflict and pressure and feeling like you're doing something wrong. So we don't want to have a repeat of that. So let's see what we're going to do this time around. Okay, so basically the new procedure is going to have three components, which is communication, outreach, and reporting. So let me go through the first three, and then Anita can take the second three. So you'll notice when you receive the syllabus template, there isn't a statement about the policy. And actually, I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail on the next slide, so I'll just mention it here. I would appreciate it if you would put in a Blackboard announcement right in your course pointing out the policy. The policy has been highlighted in all new student orientation, right? So they should have already seen this. Anita, do you want to say some things?
Sure. Could you hear me?
Sure.
Great. Yeah. So the academic engagement policy is on the registrar's webpage. I will be working on getting it put in the catalog soon. Students did receive about 3 texts regarding the policy, and we sent an email to our registered students this week, and we'll do so again next week as a reminder for them to engage and participate in explaining the policy once again regarding what their responsibilities are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to take a quick look at the syllabus template. You most likely already have done this, but I just feel like it's worth taking a closer look to show you what changed. Right, so one thing is that if I'm just going to talk about the 15-week session, so you can see down below each session has a different date. So February 8th is the date for the 15-week session. So you would basically go through, cut and paste this thing in there, and then where it says enter date and enter date, you would go ahead and enter February 8th. And so if you do not participate in this class by February 8th, you will be dropped from the class. Please note, if you begin participating during the period of time between February 8th and the date you were officially dropped, you will still be dropped from the course. And the reason why we put in that language, and a lot of you will remember this from last time, is that when the students were notified that they were going to be dropped from a course, they were still in Blackboard, right? They still had access. So what they did is they got on and they started frantically doing work. And so it created this kind of conflict. It's like, why am I being dropped? I'm doing work. And then it really, I think, put all of you in an awkward position because of the communication breakdown. So this is where you can say, it is here. It's right here. It says everything you need to know. And then if you don't mind, please go ahead and delete all those other dates from the bottom once you enter in the one date for your session, because it'll be confusing for students if they see February 4th and February 8th and all these different dates. So we don't want to have that. Okay, so that's a little brief overview. I would appreciate it if you would go over this policy in your orientation to the course. So if you're teaching in person, most of us will go over the syllabus on the first day. If you're teaching online, you probably have some kind of a course orientation. It makes it hard when you've already pre-recorded something, but I just want to make sure that when the students enter your online course, they're going to see something about this policy. I sent out an email a couple of weeks ago about planning an early assignment. And what happens here is, say, for example, you are like, I'm going to have 3 tests, and my first test is going to be due on February 20th. Well, how would you really know if a student was doing anything, right? You really wouldn't know, because logging into a course is not enough. Right. So if you're teaching an online class, logging it is not considered engagement. So you want to plan something. I always did, a reading quiz, a discussion post. Most of us who teach online, will post something to our discussion board, an introduction. If you had the introduction include an academic component, make a statement, tell me what you think about XYZ subject that we talked about on the first day, then that's academic engagement, right? So for face-to-face classes, it's actually pretty easy. If the students come to class, they're considered to be engaging. And so you can take attendance for the first couple of weeks, and then you've got it. And then post the announcement in Blackboard, which I already mentioned, and then repost it a few days before the date. Okay, so if we can move to the next slide. I already touched on this briefly, but academic engagement, it's easier to just say what it's not, right? So it's not, logging into the course, right? It's not looking at the syllabus, right? That's not academic. It's not, sending you an email that says, where is the quiz posted, but then not taking the quiz, so it has to be that the student has done something academic. So the easiest thing to do is just have an early assignment that just gets them to do something that's academic in nature. And so a discussion board, a quiz, if they email you and ask you an academic question, you could count that. And so it's a little bit flexible. And if you have some kind of a gray area where you're not sure, just go ahead and ask me. I'm very open to questions. Okay, so then let's see, next slide. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so this becomes then the procedure. So the first part is communication. We're going to try to bombard students with communication. So from you and from the college. And then the outreach, which this is what happened last time, was the outreach came after you guys reported them. So we want to reach out to students before they ever get to the point where they've been dropped from the class. And we already have a system in place. We just need to make better use of it. And we want these students to stay in these classes. Right, we have an enrollment problem. We don't want to just willy-nilly be dropping, volumes of students without at least trying to say, hey, what's going on here? Students are under a lot of stress, right? We want to be able to reach out to them. So I'm going to, all the dates are a little bit of a variety pack because it depends on what session you're teaching. So I will send a full calendar of the dates, and you'll be receiving emails, reminders all along the way. But the first step is to report anyone who hasn't done anything in the warning call system, the monitoring academic progress. So there will be a date established, a window for you to report, go through, report them. You can reach out to students, but what happens when you report people in the warning call system is They get an email, they get a phone call from an advisor. It's like really reaching out to try to say, what's going on with you? You're going to have a consequence if you don't start participating in this class. So we're trying to get them back in. And then once we get to the date, the NP date, that's when Anita comes in. Anita?
Yes. So the reporting in Banner. So once we turn on the function for you to enter in the notations of H for here or NP for not participating, it's similar to entering in final grades, only you will be using the H and the NP notations. So a recommendation is that you download your grade book, make note about why you are reporting the student. An example would be hasn't logged in, didn't do assignment. So this way you have it for your records. Once the notation of the H and NPs have been entered by faculty, I will enter the NP notation in Banner, which will drop the student from their course. And once this happens, the student will no longer see their course on Blackboard, and they will receive an email once this happens. And they will no longer be able to participate. In addition, this will refund the student for the course, or if they haven't paid, it will remove the charges. Students will most likely try contacting you at this time and ask to get re-registered for your class. We recommend that you don't allow them back in unless it is an error. As Mary Lou stated earlier, it gets problematic with other faculty member who have said no and someone may have said yes, and it creates issues for your colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I will back that up. You know, students will learn this policy. They kind of have to go through it. We had this policy at the last job I worked at, and I'll tell you, we did not have problems with it. And we actually never even sent them warnings. They just got dropped when they hadn't participated. They got reported and they got dropped. And I had probably 10 students a semester who would come in and the instructor would say they made an error or something like that. But again, you know, if you let them in and say, oh, you know what, we'll just, you know, I'll make this happen for you. If the student fails, it creates all of these problems for their financial aid. And then if they get back in and they never participate, because you could say, all right, we'll enroll you. They don't do anything. What are you going to file when you get to their grade? You're going to file an F. What's their last date of attendance? Because though they say they're going to do something, they don't always do it. So I don't want to get into the weeds of that, but it really does create problems. So I think that what we're trying to do is make it so that, you know, when students reach out to you, or if they reach out to you, you can say, you were notified here, 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 and here. You received a call from an advisor, like all of these things before the fact. And then the reason why I recommend that you download your grade book is that once a student gets dropped out of Blackboard, a lot of the information for running reports disappears. And so it's nice to be able to just say, oh, wait a minute, I looked at this and this is what happened. So that's just a recommendation. And then last but not least, I think is another slide, is I'm not going to go through all of this in detail. It's basically that we're going to send out a calendar so that each session has, you know, what is the dates that I should be reporting to the warning call system? What are the dates that I'm going to be reporting NP grades, right? So that you can have a handy little reference for every single session all on one page. And then we will send reminders, right? So that's number 3 in here. Email reminders will include wording like, you know, 15-week classes, academic engagement reporting. So if at the end of the semester you're getting 8-week classes, academic engagement reporting, and you're not teaching an 8-week class, you can ignore it. But if you are teaching an 8-week class, don't ignore it. You know, read it, look at it, think about, you know, the reporting window will be in there, instructions on how to do everything will be in there. And then if you have any questions, Anita's available, I'm available. And then we're also going to hold a Q&A session on February 1st from 1 to 2. I haven't set it up, so I'll email it a link in advance so that you can ask any questions that you want if you have any. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Proctorio. Dr. Morris?
Yeah, hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I teach microbiology and genetics, and well, go back to the last slide, please. Yeah, I'll let you know when I'm ready to advance. Thank you. I hope everyone's doing well, and I just want to say I really miss seeing everyone in person at the college, and I look forward to the time when we can meet back together and see each other. What I want to do today is share my experience of piloting Proctorio last semester. What I really want to start with is that there is a learning curve to using the software. While in a sense it's simple to use, there are complications that come up. Dean Solomon mentioned some of them, and that's that students need to have the right technology, and they need to be aware of how it works. I decided that I needed to use a proctoring software last spring when we converted our courses to online courses suddenly. And what I noticed is that there was a suspicious improvement in certain students' grades. And I've known all along that it's easy for students to go out online and find answers to standardized forms of assessment. And in fact, I've even gone out and found some of my own questions that I wrote myself online with answers, and I try to change them a little bit to see if it comes back that way, but it's just a fact of life. And so I thought using proctoring software would be a way to address that. I have been teaching another course, Principles of Genetics, online for about 10 years, and I've really shifted away from using standard testing assessments. I use many other types of assessments in that course, but the issue for me is that using other types of assessment takes a lot of my time. I have to interact with each student individually and give meaningful feedback. And so teaching the online genetics course actually takes me longer than teaching my entire other course load. So I felt like for the microbiology course, which I converted to online last spring and taught it in the fall, I didn't know that I had the time or resources to actually rely on alternative assessments completely. I have some in that course, but not as much as I would like if I was teaching it online in a permanent way. Anyway, so I decided I wanted to use Proctorio, so I signed up for the pilot last semester. And so could I have the next slide, please? This is something that Dean Solomon sent to all of you, and I don't expect you to go through this slide. I just want to show you that there are a lot of features that Proctorio offer, and you get to choose which of these features you want to use in your course to monitor students taking tests. You can choose features that require the students to have technology, besides just a laptop or a computer at home. Some of the features require that the students have video camera, a microphone, reliable internet access. So it becomes an issue if students don't have that. Next slide, please. So Dean Solomon also sent this, sort of in her notification that proctoring software shouldn't be used, lightly. It should be used for specific purposes. And she highlighted that there are high priority reasons for using Proctorio, and there's 3 bulleted ones here. Some accredited programs really require that tests be proctored, and some courses and some programs need to show that there's proctored assessments for transfer. And then there are subjects such as math and, I think, some of the sciences and other subjects that, you know, using traditional assessments are sometimes a better way of assessing student learning. So it's good to think hard about that before you decide that that's what you want to do with your course. And then I do want to point out that the Center for Teaching has developed resources for alternative forms of assessment that are very effective in a lot of situations. And so before using Proctorio, you might want to consider that. And you know, as if I were going to continue teaching my microbiology course online, I would try to shift to more and more of those over a period of time as I was comfortable. Next slide, please. All right, so you know, earlier I said Proctorio in a way is pretty simple. There are actually 3 steps that students have to go through to set it up. Very simple steps. They have to use Chrome as their browser. So the first step is Chrome is installed on their computer if it's not already there. The second step is that they add an extension to Chrome. And the third step is that they take their exam. And it should be as simple as that. But again, it wasn't as simple as that. What I did in the fall, which I highly recommend, that Dean Solomon also recommended earlier, is that you have a run through of Proctorio with your students before they take an actual, you know, for credit assessment. You have language in your syllabus, which he also mentioned, and that you speak about Proctorio frequently in your, if you're doing an LRON class, or you know, through messages and announcements if you're doing a fully online class, so that the students really understand what Proctorio is and also the reason for using Proctorio. It's important for them to buy in to Proctorio before they go through all of the necessary effort. Okay. So the next thing, I just want to show you a little bit about how you would activate Proctorio. So next slide, please. It's really pretty simple. You there's a particular feature in Blackboard that has already been added to your Blackboard course that will introduce the students to the 3 steps they have to take. And then once you're ready to use it for an assessment, you go to your assessment tool and you pick the different features you want and settings you want for your test. You set up your test the way you normally would. And then at the bottom of the settings is this simple box. You check it off. And next slide, please. And you are given a number of selected features that you can choose. And you know, I'm just showing you a few of them here, but you can see what some of them are like. You know, some are preventing the students from navigating away from the page they're on. Some are, you know, one is to keep the browser at full screen so they can't have a second screen with, you know, information on it next to the screen where they're taking the exam. You can block, cut it, and paste. You can record audio levels and hear if they're speaking, you know, multiple faces if they have somebody helping them. So some of these features require that the students have the technology, like a functioning camera on their computer or attached to their computer. And some of the features require that their microphone works. Other features don't. So if you do the pilot with your students and then you find out that some students aren't able to or don't have the technology needed, you can adjust the type of proctoring that Proctorio will do. Next slide, please. You also have, you know, levels of stringency that you would assign. You can be more lenient or less lenient depending on, you know, like, I don't know, some of it is, you know, how tech savvy the students are or how suspicious you are of your class, you know, things like that. So there's what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of flexibility in using Proctorio if you understand all of the different features. Next slide, please. You can also adjust, I don't know, how rigid or how flexible Proctorio is in flagging suspicious behaviors. And you can do this before you give your assessment. You know, these little features slide back and forth. And you can even adjust these after the exam has been taken. If you find that Proctorio flagged too many behaviors that weren't really suspicious, or you're okay with the students doing them, you can move these sliders back and forth and adjust what Proctorio did. So after the students have taken their assessment, well, let me just explain one thing. So students will, in Blackboard, they'll start their exam. Proctorio will then go through a checklist of whether the students are ready, and if you selected a video feature, it'll check the camera. If you selected an audio feature, it'll check the audio, make sure that's all set properly. You can require students to show an ID, so they will hold up their license to the camera, and it will confirm that the picture on the license is the same as the picture on the video camera. And you can even have the students, sign a statement testifying, they're stating that they're the person taking the exam. But, again, all of these features are optional features. You can select or deselect them depending on whether your students have the technology and have the computer skills that you're expecting. So next slide. The next slide, this slide, I've sort of blanked out the pictures of the students, but you can see the types of report that you get. So each one of these lines is a different student, tells me the attempts. This was a pilot, so I gave them multiple attempts, number of attempts, their score, and then you get color-coded information about whether or not there was suspicious activity. And so you can go in and check. You have access to more detailed information on each student based on the color coding. A green I probably wouldn't bother with. Yellow, maybe. Red is something that I'd be suspicious of. The tabs at the top are useful because that's where you can adjust settings if it was too stringent. The next one is Procterio Map. And I find that one really interesting because it actually shows you where the student was when they took the exam. And it's not uncommon that instructors have found that students taking the exam might be in another country because there are services that you can hire someone to take your exams for you. So could be a useful feature, especially if you're not using the video or the sound proctoring. Let's see, next slide, please. So this slide, I've edited out certain portions of it for privacy. Privacy is sort of an issue with Proctorio. The only person that can see this information is the instructor. So Proctorio makes a lot of statements about protecting students' privacy. So, at the top left, you can see that there's partial picture of a student taking an exam. And then next to that, you can see a partial picture of their computer screen because you can monitor everything that the student sees on their computer screen as they see it. And then below is a timeline. And the timeline shows green and red and yellow, depending on the level of suspicious activity of the student. Now, this brings up another issue. If you look at the timeline, this student, it looks like they took almost 5 hours to take the exam. And that's another one of the issues that I found with Proctorio. The way I teach my course is I use third-party software for giving exams. I don't build my exams in Blackboard. If you build your exams in Blackboard, it makes it using Proctorio much simpler. But I use Mastering Microbiology and I use Connect for genetics. And those are by Pearson and McGraw-Hill. So Proctorio can direct students to your third-party assessments, but in order to do that, you have to have them open the exam within Blackboard, follow a link with a password to the actual exam in the third-party platform, and then return to Blackboard and to finish up the exam. And again and again, students forgot to return to Blackboard and finish up the exam in Blackboard and turn off Proctorio. And so I ended up with, these really long periods of time where students were being recorded by Proctorio. And that was one of the biggest obstacles that I found is effectively using third-party software. So what I can see here is if I click on the play button, I can watch the student, I can see their facial expressions, their movements, where they're looking. I can see on their screen when they visit other websites, and I get reports. The issue that comes up with watching the students this way is that it feels a little invasive, both to me and to the student. And the answer that I get when I bring this up with people who are using Proctorio is it's not really so different than what I would be doing if I was proctoring an exam in class. I would be sitting there at my desk watching the students, paying attention to what they're looking at, paying attention to if they have, their smartphone out or, looking at books or going in their bags. So, that's somewhat, like, I don't know, makes it feel a little bit less invasive, but it's still something that you have to think about as you're using Proctorio. What level of privacy do you are you comfortable with? And so I decided that I'm going to continue using Proctorio. I'm going to use it this semester, having my students try pilots in the first couple of weeks of class, and I'm going to remain flexible. If my students are having a lot of trouble, I can select fewer features or not use Proctorio at all. And that's sort of where I stand. So I suggest you try it if you think your course requires it, but be prepared to go through some training and a steep learning curve. And thank you.
Next is Center for Teaching with Kim Hamilton-Bobrow and CK Pai.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Center for Teaching, Kim and myself, I would like to welcome you all to a healthy, safe, and productive semester. Next slide, please. This morning, our presentation is divided into two parts. In the first part, I will walk you through the CSCU resources on our MCC Center for Teaching Blackboard course shell. In part 2, Kim will walk you through one of the best practices in the online course environment called inclusive teaching. Our purpose this morning is to share with you a project Kim and I undertook in inventorying vetted CSCU resources for using Blackboard. Many of you are familiar with these resources. However, we wanted them to be available to you in an organized, easy to access location, which is now our MCC Center for Teaching Blackboard course shell. These are Blackboard technology tips and best practices in remote and online teaching and learning. Our plan was to have them all in one place for our MCC full-time and part-time faculty. As we all know, many of our adjunct faculty teach on multiple campuses and use a variety of course management systems, such as Angel, Canvas, Moodle, and others. When one is using these course management systems, teaching alone or online becomes confusing and challenging. When we began this project, we also had an important goal of supporting communication between program coordinators, department chairs, full-time, and adjunct faculty. Our CFT website teaching tool will ease your job to answer many of the commonly asked questions by our part-time faculty and your students. Next slide, please. There are a variety of options on Blackboard to facilitate teaching and learning, and faculty routinely review CSCU videos about uploading syllabus, posting announcements, uploading exams from one semester to the next, or designing learning modules, among others. We have organized all currently available CSCU videos on our MCC Center for Teaching Blackboard site. And we all are enrolled in this course as faculty and staff. We do not require special password or software to access these resources. And here on this slide, you are seeing the URL to access this course. Next slide, please. Let us walk through the CSCU resources that are now organized in the Center for Teaching course shell. We have also optimized these resources by creating pre and post quizzes for each video included on the CFT Blackboard site. On the left-hand side, you are going to see just below the announcement, you are going to see 3 links. One link is for the teaching tools. The second link for which Kim will talk about says inclusive teaching. And you're also going to see a link for Proctorio, and we are going to populate that as soon as Dr. Morris sends us his slides. So when you click on the online Blackboard teaching tool, next slide, please. It will bring you to this page. And we currently have populated 20 units with commonly asked questions by part-time faculty and students and how to answer those. So when you click on one of these units, let me click on unit number 16. Next slide, please. You're going to see in unit 16 inline grading using box view. You're going to see the objective on the top, telling you what you're going to learn in this unit. Below this, you're going to have a link. When you click this link, it will bring you to what is called as 1-minute paper. It's a journal entry to test what do you want to learn from this unit. Then the next link is your actual video, and it also gives you the duration of the video. Most of these videos are anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. You click on this link and it will take you straight to the video. You watch the video, and then there is a post test, which is again a minute paper to gather now after watching this video. So this is a work in progress. It is time intensive to create all these units, including the pre-test and the post-test, but we are getting there. Our goal is to organize and optimize the available CSCU resources and make technical aspect of teaching online one of continuous improvement for all MCC instructors. In addition to organizing the CSCU teaching resources, the Center for Teaching will organize a mentorship network for faculty regarding the technical aspects and options within the Blackboard platform. We want to inform all faculty and staff members that Center for Teaching is here, and we are here to help you with all your technology needs. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I will now hand over to Professor Kim Hamilton-Barbro. So next slide, please.
Thank you, CK. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's semester gets off to a strong start this week and next. I'm very happy to be here this morning. My topic is inclusive teaching. While inclusive teaching is important to on-ground courses, it's integral to online courses. Next slide, Karen. The concept of inclusive teaching is as pervasive on college and university campuses in 2021 as Chickering and Gamson's 7 Principles for Good Practice in Undergraduate Education was in 1987. As community college faculty, we know, often by heart, many of the practices and benchmarks associated with inclusive teaching and use them routinely. Let's celebrate Community College Mission 2021. In the spirit of Gandhi and King, and as Amanda Gorman, Youth Poet Laureate of the United States, and Kavanaugh Bell, a young social justice advocate, taught us yesterday, love wins. Teaching inclusively means embracing student diversity in all forms: race, ethnicity, gender, disability, socioeconomic background, ideology, even personality traits like introversion, as assets. Inclusive teaching means intentional instructional design, complete with assessment that's inclusive. Inclusive teaching means teaching courses in ways that foster talent in all students, but especially those who come from groups traditionally underrepresented in higher education. Most important, when we choose what content to teach and what to leave out, when we select examples, when we develop our teaching methods, when we design our assignments and assessments, we make decisions about what we value, and we communicate those values to our students. In the next slide, or actually, okay, Karen, in this slide, I spotlight inclusive teaching's top strategies and benchmarks. It's not an exhaustive list, and CFT welcomes faculty collaboration. Please share with us your own ideas and practices with us. Each of these top strategies for teaching has a content folder that's included on MCC's Center for Teaching Blackboard site. These slides and many of the content folders will be available on Monday, January 25th. I have 3 slides total that list strategies and benchmarks for inclusive teaching. I'll spotlight 1 or 2 on each slide. Here, let's look at the last bulleted item. Making an effort to learn your students' names and pronouns can have a major impact on their experience in our classrooms. Underrepresented students and for students with marginalized identities, learning their names and pronouns help lessen the feeling of being invisible and facilitate the feeling that they belong. Research has shown that learning student names not only increases a student's sense of belonging in a course, but also student persistence and student retention over time. The Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in particular, Walton and Cohen's research, indicates that student sense of belonging directly impacts their academic performance. Regarding Name Coach plays nicely with Blackboard. MCC CFT committee plans to reach out to the system-wide Center for Teaching and ask how many colleges would be interested and asking NameCoach to be added to Blackboard's platform. Karen, next slide. Equitizing the syllabus is a phrase used by Achieving the Dream. A number of MCC faculty, including myself, attended a fall 2020 workshop sponsored by ATD on equitizing the syllabus. There are numerous colleges and universities who either use the phrase equitizing the syllabus or an inclusive syllabus. I've provided resources on the Center for Teaching Blackboard website for both. CFT plans to run a workshop on designing an inclusive syllabus this spring and summer. Note the last item on this slide, design inclusive assessment. To be effective, assessments for learning must be actionable and ongoing. When we think of assessments, we typically think of tests, exams, or high-stake formal essays. These types of assessments do not necessarily serve student learning. While these are an important part of an instructor's assessment toolkit, there are many other methods for assessing students, many of which prove to be especially useful in online learning environments. Routine, low-stake assessment and routine instructor feedback helps facilitate student persistence and successful completion in online courses. I think that this last point about routine low-stake assessment speaks directly to Mary Lou's point regarding academic engagement. Creating feedback loops between students and the instructor, particularly in online and blended learning environments, is one of the most valuable outcomes of any assessment. Low-stake assessment and providing feedback loops to students in online courses work to empower students with feedback that helps them understand where to focus and how to build on their strengths. Provide students with immediate and practical feedback. Refocuses student attention on the learning process, including its importance, instead of on external rewards like grades or test scores. Increases student awareness of areas of need and interest, allowing them to steer their own path of learning and growth. Reduces achievement and learning gaps and raises and/or accelerates students' educational achievement. Karen, next slide. So let's look at that last bulleted item. Include a diversity statement on the syllabus. Again, CFT plans a workshop on writing a diversity statement for the syllabus this spring and summer. In the content folder on the CFT Blackboard site, I've included models of diversity statements. So again, this is the Center for Teaching's Blackboard site. These are not courses. The tech support isn't a course per se. They are resources that we've optimized, and we've optimized them through the pre and post tests so that, you know, learning sticks and that this becomes more habit for us. And again, also so that department chairs and program coordinators can share these with our part-time faculty. So they're all in one home. So inclusive teaching's included there, and you'll see that that top folder is the strategies for inclusive teaching, but there's a bunch of other folders in here that hopefully will be helpful and practical. Reflect and check 3 ways to center equity in course design. Would you take your own course? A few questions to start. Remote learning begs the questions. Excuse me, remote learning begs the question, must lectures be so long? So there's a bunch of really good stuff and resources. And again, I really just want to encourage everybody to reach out to CFT and share with us your best practices for inclusive teaching. Next slide, Karen. So this is just a peek under the hood of that first folder, and you'll see that each one of the bulleted items on the slides that I presented this morning, and most of which are listed here on that item page, but there is a content folder that includes resources and information and also really helpful, just concrete solutions and workarounds to issues that may arise in the class. So for instance, if you know microaggressions in the class, how to resolve them, what's a way in which those can be addressed openly. And again, we're really looking at the online course environment here. Next slide, Karen. So again, just a reminder, CK did mention this, a reminder about CFT's mentoring network regarding the technical options on Blackboard's platform. We also have a working bibliography that we'd like to share regarding key research findings on the topic of inclusive teaching. There's a great PDF. It's been a published print booklet, but it's a great PDF from Columbia University's initiative on inclusive teaching. Again, the concept of inclusive teaching is as prevalent on college campuses in 2021 as Chickering's 7 principles were, several decades ago. So we're happy to be participating in this work. And again, we welcome collaboration. As we know, MCC always demonstrates its best, and we are team players, and we're hoping just to have as many of you share with us your best practices for inclusive teaching. So thanks everybody, and again, I hope a very great start, strong start to your semester.
This concludes our opening day. Thank you and have a wonderful and safe spring 2021 semester. Bye.
Thank you, bye.